Hello, once again, everyone. I'm your host, Ray Shasho, and welcome to another edition of Interviewing the Legends. The original Standells band was formed in 1962 by lead vocalist and keyboard player Larry Tamblyn, guitarist Tony Valentino, bass guitarist Jody Rich, and drummer Benny King. Tamblyn had previously been a solo performer, recording several 45 singles in the late 1950s and early 1960s, including Dearest, Patty Ann, This Is the Night, My Bride to Be in Destiny. The Standells released a string of garage rock singles in the mid to late 1960s, which are now regarded as proto-punk classics. They've inspired such groups as the Sex Pistols and Ramones. Everyone from Bruce Springsteen, Aerosmith and U2 to Minor Threat has covered Standells records. They are best known, of course, for their 1966 hit, Dirty Water, written by their manager, Ed Cobb. Ed Cobb also wrote Tainted Love, a Gloria Jones song which became world famous with Soft Cell. Dirty Water is now the anthem of several Boston sports teams and is played following every Boston Red Sox and Boston Bruins home win. The song is also listed in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Rock Hall of Fame, as one of the 500 songs that shaped rock and roll. The Standells have continued to actively perform throughout the world, and their recent concert performances have been receiving rave reviews. Please welcome original member, founder, keyboardist, and singer for the Standells, Larry Tamblyn, to Interviewing the Legends. Hello, Larry.
Ray, it's great to be here.
Man, you look great. You just told me your age. I can't believe it.
Yeah, I feel very fortunate in many ways. Can I make one slight correction there about
Okay,
Cobb?
sure.
He was not our manager. He was our producer.
Okay,
Man, Mark Jacobs was actually our manager.
all right.
And I think Ed Cobb's company spread the rumor that he was our manager. He had nothing to do with the management of the Standells.
Okay. Well, we got that cleared. You heard it here, folks. I want to first talk about From Squeaky Clean to Dirty Water. That's going to be published, is it late September?
Yes, actually, we're probably looking more. If I can hold this up now.
Okay, I can see it.
More at around the end of October for sure. It's hard to tell with publishing, but the main thing is we wanted to make sure we got it right. And you published a book, so there can just be a lot of tiny things that you gotta that you find at the last minute, which we're finding. But we've got them all cleared up. I've just okayed the publisher to go ahead, and so between now and the end of October, we'll have the book printed.
Awesome. Are you going to have a big book release?
Well, I don't know, since they're not a major publisher like
right.
Random House or somebody like that. So
Yeah.
I don't know. We are going to have the books available at this book signing or autograph signing, the Chiller Theater
right.
in New Jersey on Halloween over that weekend. So I guess that could be the book signing. As far as with bookstores, I'm not exactly sure. I've never done this kind of thing before, so I'm not exactly sure how that will go.
Actually, you should make a trip to Boston. Maybe after a baseball game or something,
I think so. And we'll get into our relationship with Boston. It's quite a remarkable story. In fact, I actually start off the book with our appearance at Boston in the 2004 World Series.
Oh, wow.
And to me, it was a highlight of the Standells and my life, appearing before the crowd there and having them all sing along with the song. And then I backtrack, to the beginning of the Standells, even the beginning of my life when I was born. So I go all the way through that.
Sure. I just want to mention about the book, 343 pages, which includes 25 high-resolution photos, both vintage and recent shots of you and the Standells. That's, to me, I found the toughest part about publishing was the photos, getting those approved.
It was really tough to find. I have a gazillion photos, but
Yeah,
as most of them are very low res photos that can't be used. I
right.
was fortunate, really good person that helped me out with this because she was gathering the photos for the autograph signing at Chiller Theater. So she actually got a hold of some and then edit them properly so that they're really crystal clear, including the album cover on the book. This is the Old Dirty Water album cover, of course, and she's able to sharpen that up and did just a great job.
Excellent. Well, we're looking forward to that. When it comes out, we're going to have to trade books. You'll like this one. This is the Rockstar Chronicles. I did over 45 interviews in this book, and unfortunately, the first chapter they're all gone now. People like Johnny Winter and most of Emerson, Lake and Palmer, but it's very interesting. You'll like it because it's got some of the people that you probably toured with in the book.
I always love to read about other comrades in arms, so to speak. My doing this book was a real adventure for me.
Right.
I'd written children's stories, and so I'm not entirely new into publishing, but to write a biography, it was a real challenge in a way, because I had to devote a certain portion of my life. In this case, it took me 3 years to get this thing. And I got to tell a story. This very well-known literary agent, I won't mention his name,
Right.
had been after me for quite a while, to do this. And it was in the back of my head anyway, but he just kept on bugging me. And so I finally said, okay, I'm going to do it. And I started off, day one, I just devoted like 2-3 hours, sometimes 4 hours a day. And after I was about a year, I sent him the first draft of it. And he hated it, absolutely hated it.
Oh,
And
no.
he said, I don't like the way it started off with the World Series. I don't, and so he said that, I suggest bringing in another writer to do it. And I don't mind that so much, but, this is my life story,
Right.
and who knows better about my life story
Sure.
than me? And, the guy that he was going to bring into it, he had written and published a novel, and I read it, and I said, okay, that it's kind of a generalized view of what he was writing about.
Right.
But I finally decided, that I really want to do this on my own and do it.
Right.
And so, I did what I thought was the best way to do it is you start off with a highlight, like I said, of performing at the World Series, having the baseball team right around us when we did it, and right in that atmosphere, and then talk about what a mark we've made, not only on the Red Sox but every sports team in Massachusetts.
Exactly.
They use water as their anthem, and and even in their the duck boat tours there in Boston, they go along the river and they talk about the famous luminaries, like Paul Revere, the original Paul Revere, and John F. Kennedy, and right alongside them they mentioned Standells.
That's funny.
Really an amazing thing, and as you probably know, the Red Sox picked up on the song back in 2009. Actually, I think it was another Boston team that was using that, the Boston Bruins, if I'm not mistaken, or the Celtics. I'm not sure. but I think they were using it in this. The guy that was a music director came over to Boston, and he was just waiting for just the right time to play the song, you know. And the time he chose was a key part of this game, and it wasn't a World Series game, but it was a turnaround for them.
Right.
You know, Mo Austin was up to bat, and he hit a walk-off grand slam, and that's when he decided to play Dirty Water. And then it just became the fan favorite. They tried introducing a number of other songs and other groups, and
right.
And for some reason the fans just stuck with Dirty Water. I mean, even with I hate to say it, the Dropkick Murphys, they're a local band there, in Boston, and they even made a re-recording of a famous song, or a folk song, and they tried integrating them, but according to everything I've read, the Standells have always been a favorite with Boston.
Well, how many groups actually put Boston in their song? You know, I mean, I can remember David Loggins, Please Come to Boston. I remember the Bee Gees, Massachusetts. But yeah, nothing, you know, with that driving sound like the Standells.
I use that because people say, "Oh, the Standells aren't from Boston." And I said, "Well, neither are the Bee Gees." You know,
who cares?
You know, think about Boston, and it's true to life. It was actually written by Ed Cobb,
right,
producer. And,
right.
We rewrote a lot of it. He didn't give us any writing credits, but we rewrote a lot of the ad libs in it. I'm going to tell you a story all about my town, and mention the Boston Strangler, and it's all about the lowlife that used to be along the Charles River. They've since cleaned it up. And about the polluted waters. It was one of the filthiest in the nation, and they, you know, they used our song to actually clean up the water, which I thought was great.
Well, it's because of your song they cleaned up the water.
yeah, because of our song. And we're kind of heroes to a lot of people because of that. You know, we pointed that out, and it was just a song about the low life. And they said, "Well, you can't sing about the low life along the river, about the lovers, muggers, and thieves, you know, without being from Boston." Yes, we could, because we didn't write that line. But
exactly, that's great.
But anyway, it's been quite a remarkable part of our history, as well as other stories that led to, you know, our so-called fame, you know, our place in rock and roll. Let's put it that way.
Well, exactly.
I feel very fortunate to be part of it.
Well, besides Dirty Water, later on in this interview, I'm going to mention some other tunes by the Standells, because you guys wrote a lot of great music, not just that song. And I want to give it its fair, you know, kudos, because there's a few songs out there I really like, and you guys did have a great vocalist. He was incredible. He really was. I also want to mention right away, Chiller Theater in New Jersey, October 28th through 30th. You're going to be there with Cheech Marin, Dee Wallace, Henry Wallace from E.T. Very cool. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Also, I found out that my old friend Bob Eubanks is going to be there.
Bob Eubanks, really?
Yeah. And you know, back in the '60s, he was a disc jockey on KRLA, and I knew him very well because he managed an early band that I had before any fame, and before I made it as a single. We had a band together, and Bobby Hart was in it.
Yeah.
And, And Bob managed us, so I knew him from back then. That was back in the late '50s, and so Bob and I have stayed friends on Facebook all this time, and so I'm excited about possibly seeing him there, and of course Cheech Marin and you know, many of the others that are going to be there. You know, it's always fun to you know, intertwine with you know, a lot of people that were around back then, or even some of the younger people that weren't that had, you know, the Standells affect them in a certain way.
Well, those early days of broadcasting, those guys were my heroes. You know, talking about Bob Eubanks. I went to broadcasting school. My school was a CBS owned school.
Where did you go?
What's that?
What broadcasting school did you go to?
It was in Fort Lauderdale. They had a campus in Minnesota. It was called Brown Institute.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
I went to broadcasting school also.
Well, you got a good voice, I could tell. You got a radio voice.
Oh, I have a lot of fun with disc jockeys. I have some stories in my book about
Awesome.
running across some of these young disc jockeys, you know, and back in the days, you know, manning a small radio station, 250 watt AM non-directional, and their combo shift, and they act as both the radio personality and the transmitter operator and everything.
Yep.
And I mean, we visited some of these guys who were out in the middle of a cow pasture, you know, and sleeping on their sofa. You know?
The good old days.
They all talk the same. You remember this term? They used to call them gulpers.
Yeah.
They talk like this. Hey, I'm top 40 radio.
I was a top 40 guy. Yep. I was a top 40 guy back in the late 70s.
Yeah. One guy I talk about in my book, I actually talked back to him in that voice, and he didn't recognize it.
That's funny. Actually, Jim Lang, remember Jim Lang from the dating game? He actually attended Brown in Minnesota. That was like our claim to fame, I guess. But it was a good school. It was a really good school. All our teachers were old DJs. They all knew Dick Clark, and they had great stories from the early days of radio, you know.
Probably a little better than Don Martin, although Bob Eubanks went there, and that's what, I mean, when I was I graduated from high school, I was really turned on to them. And so I decided to go there, and they also teach you, the engineering part of the first class radio television license. And I never got to that license because I didn't know crap about about calculus and all that stuff that you really need to figure out stuff. And but anyway, it was quite an experience, and I wanted to be a DJ and at the same time, the Standells had just gotten together and were starting to make headway. And so I chose the Standells. And I guess it turned out okay.
I tell you what sucked. I got my first class FCC license. First, you had to get your third, your second, and then your first, right? Everybody said, "Man, that's your ticket to paradise. You know, you can get any job you want in radio, right?" So I got my first job in the middle of nowhere in Florida, in Sebring, Florida. Then I stepped up to Annapolis, Maryland. But as soon as I got my license, a few months after, they got rid of it. And you didn't need it anymore.
Yeah, so it was almost like I got my third class, and they prided themselves on having all the answers for the questions. You know,
that's right.
During the middle of that, this was 1960, I believe, and in the middle of that, he changed all of their answers, so we're out. And,
the 60s. The 60s was the best time for radio, in my opinion, man. It was awesome.
I mean, all of those wonderful people that I knew. You know, Bob Eubanks, of course. Jimmy O'Neill was KFWB.
Right.
And then so Sam Riddle and Don Steele. I knew them all back then. And it was so different than it is now. I mean,
it was.
As you know, corporations have taken over.
I
everything.
know. Corporations and attorneys.
And we, the small stations really played a vital role in bringing out music. The story about Dirty Water. We recorded that, and I'm jumping around here a bit, but we recorded that in 1965.
Right.
And Ed Cobb had written this song, and anybody knows about Ed Cobb's background, he was one of the original four preps. So not exactly the kind of person that would be involved in rock and roll, but he was very, very intuitive. But he wrote this song. It was just a standard blues song, 16 bars blues, and I told Ed, I said, he presented it to us, and we weren't overly thrilled with it. And I said, well, tell you what, Ed, let us give it the song to us, and we'll rework it and come up with what we like on it. And back then, he was really cool about that. He said, okay. And so we came in and completely rearranged the song, and threw in a lot of extra licks, like I told you about. The guitar riff was developed by our guitarist Tony Valentino, and it's probably one of the most imitated guitar riffs ever done. And it's not a complex, it's a very simple thing, because he was a very simple guitarist. He was not a great guitarist. And but he invented these wonderful riffs, and that's one of them. And so we reworked the song, and we went into a garage studio, by the way. It was Armin Steiner's studio. It had a lot of hits out of that, a lot of Paul Revere and the Raiders songs. And it was in the back of his home in a garage. And it wasn't even air conditioned. There was fiberglass stuck in the walls there, and it smelled like a boys' gym. And we took about 3 days to record Dirty Water, and the flip side, Rary, and that was also written by Ed Cobb.
Right.
And we played our version of Dirty Water, which Cobb just loved, and we recorded it that way. It was on a 3-track Ampex tape recorder. We didn't have 8 tracks or 16.
That's right.
3 tracks. And what you do back in those days is you record all the instruments, and then you ping pong. Nobody knows what ping pong is. That's when you take that track, you add it to another track, and you add things to it. And at that time, Dick played the mallet on the bass drum. That's how you got that really neat sound of the bass drum. He did that on a mallet on the bass drum. And also there were some other things, double the keyboard, and tambourine was added, and a few other things. Then we took those 2 tracks, ping ponged them, added the background vocals, and then we finally did the lead vocal. It took us about 3 days, and we did the song, both songs, and we kind of forgot about them. We were playing in nightclubs. And we we're right in the middle of playing in clubs. And so we went back to playing clubs. Of course, those days, we got a lot of criticism, which is unjust, that we were a cover band.
Right.
It fries me, because everybody was a cover band.
Yeah, exactly.
Beatles were a cover band.
Even the Beatles.
Where do they think Twist and Shout came from?
Exactly.
Even U2 was a cover band. So we were a cover band. So was everybody else. But we got criticized for cover band, because that's what we did up until then. And so we went back to playing in clubs, and it was almost a year later that I heard from my manager, Bert Jacobs, and called me on the phone. We were up in San Jose at the time, and we were playing in this biker club. A lot of the Hells Angels hung out there. They have a great story about that too. And he told me, hey, the record's getting some play in WLOF in Orlando. Where LOF, never heard of it. And he says, yeah. He says, we went to #1 there. I said, no kidding, and Dick Vermillion was the one that was program director, decided to go on the song, and bless his heart, he played it, and it just caught on, and it went from there to Miami, and then just spread on the coast. And California, where we're from, was very late in the game. And since our record company was not a very powerful record company, they didn't have the ability to distribute it at once. And that was one of the problems we ran into, is they're a very weak label. And and they just didn't know how to promote. But anyway, the record started slowly growing, and it was probably one of the longest running songs on Billboard.
Yep.
According to Billboard, it was longest on the charts,
Yeah.
simply because it's going from one market to the next.
Right.
And it outsold many other songs.
Yep.
Even though it reached number 11 on Billboard, number 8 on Cashbox, which is another trade magazine.
That's right.
Record Roll was number 1. It just continued to sell, and so the last club we were playing in was up in Seattle, and we.
Hey, Larry, can I stop you there real quick? We're getting thunderstorms here in Florida, so if we go out, just log back in again. This happened to me yesterday. I was interviewing someone from Tijuana, Mexico, but that's fine because I can re-edit everything. I'm just saying, if it goes out, just get back on again. Yeah. All right, go ahead. Continue.
I moved from Los Angeles. My wife and I moved to Georgia,
right?
Noonan, Georgia, which is south of Atlanta.
Right.
We were experiencing thunderstorms almost every day during the summer. So
I know. Florida's the same way, man.
So you're in where, Florida?
Yeah, I'm in Sarasota, about I don't know, 35, 40 minutes south of Tampa. Yeah.
That's Florida was a special place for us. Like, not only did the record break, but
right.
We were up in Seattle. Our manager booked us on a tour from there. Didn't know where we were going, just booked us on there. So where we go from playing in a very conservative type nightclub,
right,
to arriving in Orlando. Back then Orlando was nothing like it is today.
Before Disney, yeah.
We arrived there on the plane, and it was like a crowd of teenagers out there, with Standells signs, and they're all excited. And here we were, just a bunch of rock and rollers that didn't know anything. We're looking at this crowd. Who are they out there for? And we saw the Standells.
Very cool.
They had a chauffeur limousine for us, and it was really, awesome. Really, probably one of the most exciting times in our life, to go from playing in this club to all these screaming teenagers on tour. Yep. And he would book, and our manager booked us on these crazy tours, just one after another, just on the spur of the moment type thing, as we went along. And as the record climbed the charts, then we got more and more bookings. And we not only did Sarasota and Jacksonville and up and down Florida, but we went into the East Coast. We didn't do Massachusetts at all, I don't think. But
it's amazing.
Originally, and but we did around it, South Carolina and North Carolina, and we did those states. And
did you guys ever do those bus tours with other bands? Like the Dick Clark thing?
They came later on.
Right.
Our first major tour was when we got home from this tour, the record was finally climbing up on the charts, and but we got booked right away on the Rolling Stones tour, and that was the Aftermath album. I think that was it, and we were told as soon as we got home, our manager called us in his office. Guess what? I got you on the Stones tour.
How cool is that? Yeah.
And funny story about that is that we, had met the Stones previously, a couple of years before that. They had come into this club we were playing. They probably didn't think much of us because we were doing cover stuff, but they came into PJ's where we were playing, and I'm sure that we weren't booked because of that, but because our record was climbing the charts. So we were on that tour along with McCoy's and the Trade Winds and us, and we came on before the McCoys. We didn't open, but the Trade Winds opened, but then they had other local acts too, and So, but the first time I met the Stones, we walked onto the plane in New York, and you know, they kind of looked at us, acknowledged us, didn't say much, and we had just bought these new suit coats. You know, back then, a lot of bands wore the same suit coats.
Yeah.
And we went to this clothier in Greenwich Village, saying, "Oh, cool, bought clothes in Greenwich Village." You know, we bought these suit jackets. And this guy told us he just came in from Europe. Nobody else has them. And these are the only ones we have, you know. So we buy these suit jackets, you know, we go walking on the plane with them. And right after us, in walk McCoys, Rick Derringer and his brother, and they all have the same suit jackets over there, over their shoulders.
That's funny.
The guys don't have the same goods, the same bill of goods, you know. And so we had to arrange with them alternate dates where we'd wear the jacket.
That's hilarious. You know, I loved it. I loved it back then how the bands had their theme. You know, like Paul Revere and the Raiders, the Union Gap, the Buckinghams. You know, they all dressed, you know, appropriately. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, they did, and you know, it wasn't really until you know, until later on that everybody just started wearing their own thing, which, which is cool with me. I mean, even the Beatles, they wore matching jackets.
That's right.
You know, back when it started, and it was really the Stones that came out with wearing stuff on stage. And I remember Mick Jagger originally wore jeans and a sweatshirt when he performed. So it was just anything. But anyway, we started this tour with them, and it was just crazy, you know. Even the concerts we did, and certainly one of the first was the one in Massachusetts at that old stadium there, Lynn Stadium. It's the old tennis stadium,
right?
And that's right, concert, and it was just, you know, 50,000 fans there, just so anxious. And you know, and we got on, we did Dirty Water, and they went crazy. And you know, because it's all about Boston and everything. And we had them pulling our hair and, you know, doing all the things
Very
they
cool.
did and pulling things.
Yeah.
But then the Stones got up after the Coys, and Mick Jagger started singing Satisfaction. And the crowd just went nuts, and they all rushed the stage. And I wrote about this in my book. They all rushed the stage, and the rent-a-cops there, we call them rent-a-cops there, but they had tear gas. They shut off tear gas at the
Really?
crowd. Big crowd, big clouds of tear gas.
Oh,
and
man.
They had to stop the concert short, and we all climbed on buses to go in and out of the stadium. Of course, we were on a plane to go from city to city, but we took buses. Of course, the Stones jumped in their limousine. But in our bus, we drove through a cloud of that tear gas. And I want to say,
that stuff's horrible.
Yeah, it left us teary-eyed. Not the concert, because we were choking to death.
Yeah, that stuff's bad.
Very memorable. And we went up and down. You know, all over the country. Sometimes concerts a day in different cities.
You know, it's amazing how Dick sounded a lot like Mick Jagger, you know, and not only in Dirty Water, but a lot of other tunes, you know. He had a great voice. Yeah, really had a good voice.
He had a great voice. I was the lead singer up until he joined us. He joined us in 64, but I was the lead singer. Ed Cobb saw something in him wisely that he wanted to use on Dirty Water, and I don't disagree with him. I wish you know, I did sing on a lot of songs that I didn't credit for.
Right.
Like one of the songs is the third most listened to on YouTube. It's called Mr. Nobody. Yep. Which I wrote and sang. And it was the flip side of Why Pick on Me. A lot of people ask why that wasn't the A side, and I said, well, Dick didn't sing it, and Cobb didn't write it, but it's a favorite of a lot of people. They love that song, and a lot of others, you know, that I did.
Yeah, I want to mention you got a very interesting Hollywood connection. I did some research, and I was shocked, man. first of all, your older brother, right, Russ?
Yeah.
He goes way back, man. I mean, I remember watching The Boy with Green Hair. That's a 1948 flick. I saw that movie. And he was in it.
Yeah, he didn't even speak in that. You know, something interesting is he was good friends, lifelong friends with Dean Stockwell.
Dean Stockwell. Yep.
Not with Russ, and that was one of his first. That was his first movie.
He was in Babylon 5, Twin Peaks, The Haunting of Hill House, a TV miniseries. Let's see, he earned an Academy Award nomination too, right? And West Side Story, I think.
Was for Peyton Place.
Peyton Place, okay.
And you know who won it that year was Red Buttons for his.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I liked Red Buttons.
Never heard from Red Buttons again. What can you say?
Yeah.
Anyway, he had a string of movies. The Kid from Cleveland.
Right.
You know, about the Cleveland Indians at that time. They were. Let's see, Father of the Bride.
Right.
And I write about him a lot on my book.
Oh, cool.
Because my father died when I was 14. And Russ
that's
really
Eddie Tamblyn, and he was an actor as well.
He was a vaudeville star,
mm-hmm.
and met my mother on stage, as you probably read. And I write about this in my book. And they were married, and she was a chorus girl. And married. The first son was born in New York, Warren, and then Russ was born in California, and I was born later on.
Right.
But my dad died when I was 14, so I had a really tough time with my abusive stepfather. My mother remarried, and I had a really tough time. Russ became my mentor, and I talk about how he used to take me with him to a lot of the films that he did, and I actually talk a lot about my experience going on the West Side Story set.
Very cool.
And watching the funny story about watching the group of the Sharks warming up. I don't know if you were, they're all they were practicing tossing the switchblades.
Yeah.
Doing that.
Yeah.
These guys are bad looking, and they were really, and some of them were really ugly looking, and I said, man, what are these guys doing in a musical, And all of a sudden they start doing their ballet exercises.
That was strange.
Oh, okay. I got to meet a lot of them.
I can imagine all the people you met.
Richard Beavers was the star. He couldn't sing. He didn't do much of anything. He didn't get nominated, but George Takiris, I met him, and he became a good friend. He came out and used to come out to visit us when we performed at PJ's, so that really made an impression on me when I was a kid.
But you know what? It doesn't stop there, because your niece is Amber, right? Amber Tamblyn. And I saw her recently. I was on YouTube watching some stuff. She was in Two and a Half Men episode. She played the character of Jenny, right? And she was
brought on, I think, the last season, if I'm not
mistaken. She was the illegitimate daughter of Charlie. That was a funny episode.
I went to one of the tapings, as a matter of fact.
Did you really?
Love Amber. I mean, we used to babysit Amber when she was just a little child, and precocious as hell. But you knew she was going to be in film. You couldn't stop her. And I remember telling Russ, and he'll never admit it, but both Mom and I said, you're not going to hold her back if she wants to be an actor.
Right.
So I don't want a child of mine to do that.
Yeah.
Child actor syndrome, but sure enough, she did a school play, and it was Pippi Longstocking, and she was still in elementary. And this agent of Russ's came to see it, and she says, "I got to sign Amber." And pretty soon she had her doing, just low budget flicks. And then eventually, got the role on the soap opera.
Right.
Yeah, and she was one of the Quartermains, I think.
It's in the blood, man.
Yeah, she's done that for years, and that's a real training ground for any actor. They come in the day before with the script, and they have to learn it and shoot it the next day. And we used to babysit Amber, because she had to have some kind of parent or relative there with her, and so we used to go a lot back then and take her with us. And she went on to do some great things, and of course, one of the stars of Joan of Arcadia, I mean, and she's very well known for that. And recently, she did another thing. I can't think of the name of it. It was just on briefly on AMC, and she was on that. But the other thing that a lot of people don't know, that Amber has since become a very, very well-known author. She's
great.
4 books.
What kind of books?
Best-selling poetry. And come out with a few fictional books.
Right.
And she's very, very intelligent, and I see her frequently. They have relatives out here in Atlanta that they visit. We come out and we visit with them, and so that, I guess, that runs in the family, right? That's what they say.
Why not? Now, did she marry David Cross?
Yeah, David is just the greatest. I love David. He's known for, of course, the kind of roles he did.
Yeah, Men in Black. That's one of them.
Right. He is just the greatest guy. I just love him. He's turned out to be just a great husband and a great father. They have a child now.
Yeah.
She's every bit as precocious as Amber was at that age. And they're not going to keep her off the screen either.
Very cool.
Anyway, I don't know if they intend to, but I mean, you can't keep her down. Yeah, she's Amber brought her with us this last time. It was for the last Thanksgiving, and this girl was entertaining for guests around there and putting on shows and everything. Just Amber did at that age.
Yeah, that's great.
To, the Standells, I just feel honored to have had this break. A lot of other people didn't.
That's right.
And I always say that I was just fortunate. I happened to be in the right place at the right time. Back then, rock groups had a much better chance than they do now. And the rock groups that made it had been together for a while, at least most of the early groups. So it's completely different. It is now. I mean, now sometimes they hardly even know each other. I mean,
that's true.
Thrown together for some kind of publicity stuff that didn't even know each other. And then they break up almost as soon as their fame runs down. And,
I want to mention the Standells had some famous people in that band. They had Lowell George from Little Feat. He was a member of the band for a while. They had Dewey Martin from the Buffalo Springfield. A lot of people probably didn't know that.
A lot of people don't know that Dick Dodd actually quit the group 4 times. And we had a bit of a problem with him, his loyalty issues. He quit it right after recording Dirty Water, as a matter of fact.
Really? Oh, man.
Not knowing it was going to be hit, and then when he learned it was climbing the charts, and he wanted to be back with the group again. I was against it, but everybody else was for it. So, what can I say? But he during that time, Dewey Martin joined the group, and that was before Dewey had joined Buffalo Springfield, and I loved Dewey. I just thought he was so funny, and I just loved him. But the other guys didn't care for him that much. And then so Dick came back, and I told you about the rest. And Lowell George didn't join the group until after Dick quit again for the third time, and he was, I thought him to be extremely, extremely intelligent and as a musician, very, very, educated. He studied Ravi Shankar.
Right.
And I thought he may have been a bit overqualified for the Standells, and as it turned out, he didn't care for the Standells that much, and we had some issues. He wanted to take over the leadership of the band, and I've always been the leader, and I read about this in the book. He wanted us to grease our hair back, like
really?
Sean O'Na.
Oh God!
Yeah. Well, that's the league we're in. I said, we're never greasers, and that's what he wanted. I said, no, we can't.
Interesting.
Do that. And, so that's where we had our falling out, and he didn't have too many really good things about his experience with the Standells. I don't have too many good things to say. Rest in peace, but I don't. It's just one of those things, you run into various people along the way. And,
exactly.
Some of them are great relationships, which you keep forever, and some of them aren't.
Yeah.
It's just the way it goes.
I got to ask you, you guys were on the Munsters, and I watched that episode. Okay. How come you guys sang I Want to Hold Your Hand on that Beatles cover?
We get asked that a lot. Let me tell you the time frame.
All right.
We did that show in 1965, about a year and a half before Dirty Water was ever. And so we didn't have much of a say-so in the songs we did. We were picked to do the show after having done the Bing Crosby show. We were on the Bing Crosby show. Made a guest appearance on that as a fictional group called the Love Bugs. And we acted in that and sang. And then we were called to do the Munsters, and they insisted that we do, I Want to Hold Your Hand. And I didn't want to do it, neither did the guys. Although we did do it in clubs and everything. It's just, covering somebody like the Beatles, to me, is almost sacrilegious. But
right.
They insisted, so we did it. And, we get teased about that a lot from people. It's just that we had no choice. Either do the song or don't do the show,
Exactly. You guys appeared in a lot of...
Even so, we got a lot of fame from that show. A lot of people know us doing that show. Yeah. In fact, some of the autographs I'm going to be signing at the Chiller Theater are photos that we took on set with the Munsters. They're posed photos, and they're really quality photos, and with us with the Munsters, and I'll be autographing those.
Is Eddie Munster going to be there?
Butch Patrick, I think so. I'm in touch with him.
He does a lot of those shows.
He's been a good Facebook friend of mine for years, and just a wonderful man. I just really love him. And we often joke about that one scene I did on the Munsters where we were meeting with our manager earlier in the episode. And you remember this, but talking about him, and I was eating a banana at the time. I had most of the speaking line, and I was eating a banana at the time, he was talking about getting us a place where none of our fans could find us, and they picked the Munsters home. But I was eating a banana all the way through this, and I never could get that scene right. I mean, it took me half a dozen bananas to get through that, and I got so sick from eating bananas. And Eddie and I, Butch and I joke about it all the time. He remembers it well, and it was the Munsters was really another highlight because at the time it was my favorite TV show. I watched it.
What was it like seeing Fred Gwynne in full costume, huh?
I love Fred Gwynne, even before when he did Car 54. Where are you?
Right, him and Al Lewis. Yeah.
I loved them both, and Yvonne Harlow. I mean, she was just marvelous. A great Broadway performer, and that scene where she sang in it in the Munsters. That was her singing.
Yeah.
And she's got a wonderful voice. But the hardest thing we had to do, most difficult thing, was when Herman Munster read his poetry, and he's bibbidi bobbidi boo.
Yeah.
And this crazy reading, and we had to sit there and just act like we were just really into it, you know. And all the while it's funny to break up, you know.
Yeah.
And, that was very difficult.
Yeah. Of course, Yvonne DiCarlo, man, she was a legend. You know, she was in the Ten Commandments, I believe. Yeah.
Well, they don't realize. I mean, a lot of the cast from those old TV shows were pros and had done a lot. They're wonderful to work with,
right?
And wonderful to speak to. I don't know about nowadays, but back then they were just wonderful and big stars. I mean, I would run into people like Edward G. Robinson, who played gangsters in movies. You know, he stopped to talk to me about how big of a fan he was of the group, of the Standells, and it was just so nice and so pleasant. And I thought, gosh, you know, that is just so great.
Yeah,
and,
very cool.
I've always tried to be like that with people that approach me, you know.
Yeah.
Not that I consider myself on the same level as Edward G. Robinson, but I always like to take the time to visit with people, and I will as much as I can at the autograph show. You know, it's not going to be quite the same because there's going to be crowds and crowds of people. So there's only so much time I can take.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I can see that. I wish it was here in Florida, man. We don't get stuff like that anymore.
You know, it's not so bad for me because, like I said, you know, a couple of hours flight, you know, to New Jersey from here.
Right.
And would have been if I still lived in Los Angeles. We moved out here a year ago and just love it. But we've had just a lot of experiences. And, you know, after the Standells broke up, a big part of my book about, you know, what took place after the group broke up, which was right about the end of 1969, after Low George left, and we had a few changes in groups, and I just got sick of it, and I wanted to go on to other things. But it wasn't until the late 1970s, early 80s, when these punk groups started coming out.
Yep.
And you know, like the Stooges, and a lot of them, you know, paid tribute to the Standells as having really inspired them. And in fact, I had lived out of state for a while, and I moved back to Los Angeles, and I started seeing Standell's name, you know, in various trade magazines. I go, what? This got to be some kind of mistake. You know, I thought we were dead and buried. You know, and you know, at the time, you know, you know, our music was old hat. I mean, punk rock had changed from, you know, punk rock to folk rock, and then acid rock, and jazz rock, jazz fusion, and you know, by 1969, it was that stuff that we did was old hat. It was you know, and then in the 80s, it suddenly came back again. We were heroes. And so we got back to, you know, together for a few reunion shows. And I talk about a lot about this in the book, and you know, how it just didn't seem to fall in place. We had more problems with Dick, you know, and egos in the group, and so on, and it just it didn't happen until you know, later on. We were called together in 1999 for Cave Stomp, and then it was then that we hadn't been together in, you know, 4 years, and we were called to do that, and not only that, but to record a live album there. And people can find it on the internet. It's called Ban This.
Okay.
And Ban This refers to the episode we had with Gordon McClendon. We didn't talk about this. And in 1967, we had what we thought was going to be our next big hit. Billboard magazine did it as our next big hit. Try it. And it had all the elements of a hit song in it, you know. And the way Dick sang it was just great. And the minute we recorded it, we knew it was going to be a hit. Well, about the same time as it came out, all the radio stations jumped on it, and it began to barely hit the charts. And Gordon McLennan, the owner of KLIF in Dallas, happened to be one of the most powerful people in the business. He owned not only KLIF, but a chain of radio stations across the country. And they did the program for countless others, if you know the story about him. Very powerful man. And he decided to come out with a campaign against obscenity in record lyrics. And he picked it mainly on us because we weren't as big as the Stones, who had let's spend the night together out.
Yeah, exactly.
And, so he picked on us, and he actually did a national tour, showing our record, saying this is an example of the kind of records we recommend that nobody plays and buys. And unfortunately, a lot of radio stations were scared to death of them because they were threatened by McLennan that they would have their radio telephone licenses examined.
Right.
And so a lot of them would stop playing the record just on Gordon McLennan's say so. And so it went from being played by everybody to nothing, and it dropped off of the charts. Well, at the time, Art Linkletter had a show on called House Party. Remember that?
Yep,
and,
I do remember that.
He had, during the last couple of seasons, he had a segment on the show called Let's Talk.
Right.
He had various factions on that debated each other. And he decided to have the Standells debating Gordon McLennan. And so we did our homework on McLennan before the show. We found out, if you always want to find out who the scumbag is, always follow the pointing finger right up the arm. Yeah, that man, I want to tell you, I can't even repeat some of the stories we heard about him, but there are books out about him. And well, one thing that's well known, he was a good friend of Jack Ruby, the guy that
really,
killed Oswald.
Yeah.
And that Jack Ruby used to come, spend a lot of time in those radio stations, and he was also implicated in JFK assassination.
That's right. Yeah.
So according to these books, and I've got them listed in my book. But anyway, we debated this man, and I thought we really did well, and a lot of people did. And they had the debate in a teenage nightclub back then. It was called the Hullabaloo.
Sure.
They had a lot of acts there, and
oh yeah,
the old Moon Club, and filled full of teenagers. And McLennan didn't have a chance to begin with. And then our management fed the audience with some inside information, not being specific, but enough to spark his anger. And I'll never forget that during the debate we were doing all okay without the audience, but every once in a while somebody would pop up and say, "What about your niece, McLennan?" He looked out there.
That's great.
Look out there, his face got all red, and and the other one was, "What about the baseball games, McLennan?" They had faked radio broadcasts for live as being live broadcasts, play-by-play from baseball games.
Right.
And they weren't. They were actually somebody at the baseball game spotting and then calling in what was happening.
Yeah.
They have a guy there at the station pretending like he was at the game with all the crowds and sound effects and everything. They were doing that till they got caught. But anyway, some of the worst things we couldn't mention quite a bit because we didn't have witnesses. But anyway, some of the comebacks for him, you're talking about, a record, Try It. And I just said, what's wrong with our song? The lyrics are, by the way you look, I can tell that you want some action.
Yeah,
action
exactly.
is my middle name. Come over here, pretty girl. I'll give you satisfaction. Come on now. Tell me about that. Yeah. But two are needed for this game. We'll give you sweet love you've never had before. That's the extent of it, And he deemed this as being something
unbelievable,
filthy and encouraging young girls to have sex. That's what he said.
Gosh.
And he said, well, it's obvious what it's about, and he came back and I said, well, what about Songs of Your Days? What did Birds Do It, the Bees Do It mean?
Yeah.
What was that about?
Exactly. Larry, the song was called Try It. Was that the song? Try It?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was from Riot on Sunset Strip. Yeah.
Yeah. Come on, try it. And,
try
it. It was so ridiculous, and with a more powerful label, we wanted to sue McLennan actually and bring a libel suit against him. And the record company, Tower Records, and our Ed Cobb's company, Adirac, who licensed us to Tower, refused to do it. And instead, they worked a deal with McLennan to play our next record, which was Can't Help But Love You.
Right.
And it was the dumbest mistake you could make. The recording by then, well, we killed McLennan in this debate, but they took and edited a lot of our great answers, like mine about
did they really?
Birds, Bees Do It. Some of the other great responses they took out, so it made it look like I was more even-handed.
Yeah.
But our next song that we recorded was Can't Help But Love You.
Right.
And Ed Cobb, by then, one time have been like a fifth member of the group, just so easy to work with, had become, and I say this respectfully, but had become unapproachable, had refused to meet with any of us, had completely taken over the songs, the selection of songs, without any input from us. Although we did get some songs in there, but there were songs that I wrote, that I wrote and sang. So yeah, we'll throw that in. One of them was Nobody I talked about, which happened to be one of the better songs. But anyway, one of the songs that we did was Can't Help But Love You. And what Ed had done was to bring in these two R&B arrangers, Ethan and what's the other guy's name? I can't ever remember. And they did this. They wrote the song, and they had a bunch of R&B musicians on it.
Right.
He wouldn't even let us play on our own record.
Oh, jeez.
And I said, why can't we at least play on it? He says, well, these guys sound more like Standells than you do. And
oh, gosh.
That's in my book. So they released this song, and it's really an R&B song. And Dick sings it, and he sounds like a white boy, sounding like, trying to sound like Ray Charles. And it was such a departure from the Standells songs. It made the chart. I think it made number 78, but then it went off. But all of McLennan's radio stations went on the song. But that was the beginning of the end. Because it didn't sell because it wasn't the Standells.
Right. Larry, there was a lawsuit, right, in 2006 against Anheuser-Busch. What happened there?
That was a thing where they it wasn't the first lawsuit we were involved in, but it was a thing where they went ahead and used dirty water in a commercial.
Really?
And they had the song rights, okay, but what a lot of people didn't know is we were also members of SAG-AFTRA at the time we did it. So they also had to pay us acting fees as well.
Okay, I got you.
It's the way it goes. And so they went ahead and they did this without even paying the song royalties. And they did it. And so we had, by then, we have a company representing us called Artist Rights Enforcement Corporation.
Right.
They're a nonprofit organization out of New York. They handle a lot of old rock people. They handled Richard Berry, for instance, Louie, and, and got maybe $200 for it, and they represented him and got hundreds of thousands of dollars for him, and other people like him. They contacted, or I contacted them. I found out about them and say, hey. This is in the early 80s. I'm trying to back up here and tell you what it led up to.
Right,
in the early 80s. I started seeing all these new Standells albums come out on Rhino Records. And there were reissues of some of our early songs. Some of them were songs that hadn't even been issued, that hadn't been released. And so I called up Ray Harris, who was the head of, by then it was called, can't think of it. They changed their names from Atarac to AMI, I think. Artist Variety International, that's AVI.
Right.
And I called him up and I said, why haven't we seen any royalties from this? He says, oh, it's not selling anything.
Yeah,
and,
right.
I said, well, why? Then how come you've released, 3-4 albums, it's not selling anything? And he says, oh, they're demanding that we release everything or they won't take anything, some stupid response. So that's when, all the guys in the group were coming to me, of course, saying, we got to do something about this.
Yeah.
It's always up to me, One individual, Tony, he was very difficult to work with, a guitarist, and he said, they're screwing us, and you got to do something about it. So I found these guys, and they, I signed with them, and they went after them and got an out of sort settlement with them.
Okay,
it was pretty good settlement, but what they got also in addition to that was all the future royalties of anything that's sold.
I got you.
And I can't tell you how much we made, but it's been considerable.
Oh, good. Awesome.
And I have nothing but praise for them. They're out of New York, and I recommend anybody to go to these people because they do a great job, and they have attorneys on staff. And so what happened with this, getting back to this Budweiser commercial, is that they did this, and so our people, AREC, got one of it and contacted them, and they didn't have a good response from them, and so they got a staff attorney involved, and they pressed a lawsuit, against them. But that, like I said, it wasn't the first lawsuit. We had to actually sue AVI, Ray Harris, Cobb's company, to get our royalties back. So, it's kind of part of our, the Standells history of lawsuits. Like any rock group.
Like any rock band.
Can't tell me a rock group that hasn't been involved in a lawsuit.
Oh yeah.
It happens with everybody.
It's part of the business.
And they had to end up, paying us, and they, even though they decided not to use the commercial, they still had to pay us.
Yeah. I want to mention some of the other great songs by the Standells. Everybody hears Dirty Water, but I hear the whole repertoire. And I just want to mention some great songs, man. You guys did a great version of Hey Joe, very punk version of Hey Joe. I loved it. My favorite song, one of my favorite songs, Don't Need Your Lovin'. That's a great tune, man. Very good song.
Yeah, that was one of those that we recorded and then was forgotten about, and they didn't release until the 80s. Re-release albums, so we didn't even know about it.
Very Rolling Stones, very hip tune, man.
Yeah.
You did some psychedelic stuff too. Don't Say Nothing at All was kind of a psychedelic tune. I mean, you can hear the blend of the times, psychedelic. You mentioned the R&B stuff. The covers, you did So Fine. You did You Can't Do That. You did that Beatles cover, which was great. Linda Lou.
Those were on the early albums. The Standells Live at PJ's done in 1960. Yeah.
99 and a Half. That was another R&B type song.
I sang
that. Was you? Did a great job, man. Excellent job. I saw Help Yourself on the Dick Clark on Bandstand on U2. That was neat.
Yeah, Dick sang that one.
Yeah, that was very, very good. Of course, Ride on Sunset Strip. Sometimes Good Guys Don't Wear White. That was a popular tune, right?
Yeah, Ed Cobb wrote that, and I give him credit for it. Dick did some improvisation in it, and It's just a great song. It's been covered a lot by
Mm-hmm.
a lot of different.
You did Medication was an interesting song, huh?
Yeah, that was on the original Dirty Water album, and
Okay.
it was sent to us. The I think the woman that wrote it that recently passed away. She was pretty old.
Right.
Maybe it was for real. Her medications weren't working for her. I don't know. But that was a great song, and you know, all of it again was recorded in at studio up in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't Armin Steiner's studio. It was I can't think of his name. I'll think of it in a moment. But when we were up in Seattle, Dirty Water had hit the charts, and so they needed to rush out an album right away. And so Ed Cobb flew up there, and we threw together this album. It took us 3 days to do the album, and Medication was one of them. And you know, several songs were part of that were, you know, that turned out to be pretty good. Little Sally Tease is another one from that album, and that was written by Harpo, the guy that was Harpo and Jim Valley. And it would be part of the Raiders. Yeah. And we all had ties with each other back then.
Yeah. I know Mark Lindsay. He's a great guy. Really good guy.
I do too.
Yeah.
He's a good man.
Yeah.
We have a lot of memories. I mentioned Mark in my book. Not a lot, but we were on the tour with them, and so that's a very memorable tour.
Here's a little tidbit. Mark Lindsay was responsible for Baker Street getting on the radio. The song Baker Street. It was because he was doing A&R at the time. He was an A&R guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't. Yeah.
I got a little some little funny stories about him, but I won't tell now. In my book, I have a whole chapter devoted to groupies.
Right.
And I break it down into regular groupies, super groupies, and plaster casters.
That's actually a good idea.
Yeah, and I actually, you know, I praise them. You know, they were the lifeblood of rock groups back then.
Definitely.
Tours, you know, and I actually give them a lot of praise, and but I talk about Mark in that regard, especially with the plaster casters, but I won't go into.
Oh, really? You know, you mentioned PJs. I interviewed Trini Lopez, who did an album at PJs, and when
Trini was at PJs right before we were.
Really?
Yeah, and they were just a small club. They held no more than 150 people.
Right.
And then we came in, and we were the house band for like a couple of years after that, and they like tripled the size of the room. I ended up holding about 1,500 people. So it was you know, they knocked out the walls to an adjoining building.
Right.
They did all sorts of stuff, and that eventually became the Starwood, where a lot of great groups were discovered there.
Interesting.
But Trini has been a good Facebook friend. Over the years.
Unfortunately, he passed away from COVID. Yeah.
Yeah, like a lot of people, man.
I know. Very sad.
People. Yeah. He passed away. You know, just an awful lot of them have gone, and it's hard to keep track. I've got about 5,000 Facebook friends, and it's hard to keep track of all of them.
I know.
And plus, I'm in Facebook jail now.
Really?
For 2 months in a row.
What'd you do?
I can't say anything. I mentioned the Standells song, "Sometimes Good Guys Don't Wear White."
Right.
I was banned for a month for that.
Why?
Saying it doesn't meet community standards. Yeah, you know.
Oh my gosh.
So, next, when I get back on in a couple of weeks, I'm just gonna type in a bunch of gibberish and say they can't ask me for this, you know.
Oh, that's crazy. That's crazy. Larry, here's your final question, and I ask everybody that I interview this same question. I get some interesting answers. If you had a Field of Dreams wish like the movie to perform with, collaborate with anyone from the past or present, who would that be?
That would have to be Paul McCartney.
McCartney? That's like the number one answer.
Yeah. I mean, the Beatles, I could be honest, they influenced me.
Yeah.
Back when the Standells played in the early days, when we formed in 1961, I mean, groups really didn't have stardom.
Yeah.
You know, you never heard of a major group.
Right.
You know, there were the Four Seasons. You know, they started off as a rock group.
Right.
But then what did they do? They made them into a doo-wop group.
Yeah.
You know, Frankie Valli was a drummer. He was a studio musician. All of them were, and they made him into a doo-wop group. But you know, along came the Beatles in '63, and they changed everything.
Yeah.
And they made it possible for groups like us, for you know, Rolling Stones, everybody else to become stars or become, you know, have their marks in show business. And you know, I'm grateful for that. You know, and I'm honest about it. You know, some people you know, talk against the Beatles, like you know, I gotta pay attention to them. I couldn't stand them. You know, how could you not like the Beatles? You know. But yeah, Paul McCartney would be one. Never had the opportunity to perform with them like I did with everybody else, but not with them. I wish we would have toured with them.
Yeah. Did you get to meet any of the Beatles?
No, never did. I'm sure they must have heard about us, especially doing that cover of their song in the Munsters. I'm sure that it was brought to their attention. That was, by the way, that was recorded on the soundstage at the studio, and they knew nothing about rock and roll then. And it's one mic recorded everything. You know, the instruments, the vocals. Right. Insisted on every member singing, and you know, one of the guys couldn't sing at all, and he had to sing. And so it was just awful, and I admit it. Of course, a lot of people like it, so I'm not going to argue with them, but you know, just one of those things. But yeah, again, it would have to be you know, the Beatles, and who changed history. You know.
Yeah, I've had Tommy Rowe on the show many times. He's a great guy, also. He talked about, he tried to get the Beatles signed originally, and they turned him down on another label. Can you imagine that?
Look at the labels they were on.
You know,
they were on. They were on several labels before.
I think they were on VJ at one time too, right? VJ. Then eventually Capitol, but
Well, VJ. Tower was a part of Cap. It was a subsidiary of Cap.
Right.
VJ was you know, they had a lot of old R&B acts. Jimmy Smith and they had quite a catalog there. And they signed the Beatles, and they couldn't with them. And you know, later on they signed us, and soon afterwards they went bankrupt. And so they closed down, and that's when we met at Cobb in that group. But yeah, VJ, just another one of those stars. You know?
Exactly. Larry, I want to thank you so much, man, for being on the show today. I mean, I can talk to you all day, you know, especially about radio. I got some good stories too.
I got radio stories that you wouldn't believe.
You know, I knew right away when I heard you. I heard you on an interview on YouTube, and I said, he's got to have been in radio at one time in his career, because he's got that '60s radio voice, you know.
I consider that a compliment. Never got to really do my chops on radio, as you know, Mark is doing it now. And he's got his show together. But
it's never too late. Never too late. You can do a podcast, you know.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. But anyway, yeah, it's just been a pleasure, and you know, I have so many experiences, and my book is you know, is pretty extensive. It covers you know, the rise and fall of the reunions of the Standells, and my life story being born in a show business family, my brother, and then what happened after the Standells.
Yeah.
And, pretty comprehensive.
Well, let me know when it's finally out.
We'll do that.
Email me. I want to mention you can you're on Facebook, of course, www.facebook.com/Standells. You're on Twitter, you're on Instagram. I couldn't find your website. Is your website up?
I took it down.
You took it down, yeah.
And it cost a lot of money, and it just wasn't bringing in and there is no more Standells, to be honest.
Right.
I'm the last. And I bring in other guys, and they're sidemen, and they're not original Standells.
Exactly.
The last original member I had was about 3 years ago. John Fleck, our bass player, that was our third bass player, played on Try It and a number of songs. He was the last original member.
Okay.
At that time, I could call it Standells, but now it's just me. So I go out as Larry Tamblyn of Standells.
Okay.
Standells, and I do concerts, and I just have a band wherever that is to back me up.
So if anybody wants to find out what's happening in your life, they go to Facebook, or okay, that'd be the best place, I guess.
Facebook, I have a Facebook group called Larry Tamblyn and the Standells.
Okay.
Join that and keep everybody updated on that, or the Standells Facebook page. There's 13,000 people follow that. And my personal page, I'm very careful about friends though, because I'm almost filled up. So
I know.
I have to make sure that there's a right fit there.
Right.
Anyway, please feel free to look me up, I'll be glad to answer anybody's questions.
Okay. As soon as the book comes out, I'm going to post it on all my websites for you, and we'll do our best to promote it. And I will send you all the links to this interview as well. It'll be everywhere: Spotify, Pandora, Apple. I'm everywhere, so it'll get a lot of exposure.
Great, I deeply appreciate it. The publisher is Bear Manor Media. They do a lot of kinds of books, and they're really cool to work with. It took me a long time to find their publisher, and they are the right ones.
I want to write more. I've written 3, but I'm afraid because it takes so much time out of your life. When you're done, you look back and say, "Holy crap, I'm old already." If
I had known going into this how much time it would, be involved in it, I might not have taken on the chore. But
I know.
Once I'm done, I really feel, and you have the feeling too. It's a lifetime achievement.
It is.
And not many guys or women can say, I wrote a book.
I'm glad you did it your way. You know who else was like you? Susie Quattro. She wrote a book.
Oh, I love Susie. She's a Facebook friend.
Oh, really? She's awesome. We traded books, but she did the same thing. They wanted to change a lot of things around in her autobiography, and she said, "Hell no, I'm going to write it my way."
Most people, if you listen to the fans, they want to hear from the star. They want to hear from Susie. They want to hear from Mark, from Johnny Eccles, a good friend of mine from Love, and others. They want to hear what they say.
Exactly.
Not somebody that didn't live that life.
Right.
And you're absolutely right.
Yep. I'm glad you did it your way.
Thanks.
Larry, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Okay. Have fun at the show. It's going to be great.
Thank you so much, Ray.
All right, Larry. Take care. Bye-bye.